America's first zoo opened in Philadelphia on July 1st, 1874. Today, there are well over 400 zoos operating in this country, welcoming about 180 million visitors each year. But as you'll see in our next story, maybe humans are not the only ones coming to observe what's inside.
May 21st, 2022, Amarillo, Texas. It's around 1:25 a.m. and the zoo's security cameras are keeping their sleepless eyes on its animals when they capture this. A strange figure just outside the zoo's perimeter lurks in the darkness. As we push in, the figure appears to be standing on two legs just on the other side of the fence, looking inside. Shocked by the size of the creature and its rather wolf-like head, the Amarillo Zoo has begun asking the general public for help figuring out what this UAO, unidentified Amarillo object, could be. Take another look. This bipedal creature is quite puzzling. The image goes viral with thousands of people viewing it.
Now let's take a closer look at this image. A lot of folks have said they can discern fur on this thing's arms and pointed ears on its head. On the other hand, some people say it's standing like a human and it looks like it's wearing pants. And they see this as a jacket. As for me, I have no idea.
Field researcher Ken Gerhard cites the figure's resemblance to an infamous creature from folklore.
One of the theories is that it could in fact be a chupacabra, a famous creature that has been talked about throughout Latin American culture since the 1990s and is a blood-sucking type of creature. The name chupacabra actually means goat sucker because it's been alleged that these creatures will drink the blood of goats and other small farm animals. I've examined the remains of several creatures that have been called chupacabras, and all of those animals displayed very dog-like features. Pointy ears, long snouts, strange skin, long fangs, other physical abnormalities.
During a 2-month period in 2010, more than 300 goats were slaughtered in rural Mexico. Ranchers believe these deaths resulted from a chupacabra stalking their livestock. So could this image be a chupacabra stalking the zoo? Our experts investigate.
Professor of biology Floyd Hayes begins by estimating the size of the creature.
To me, it looks like the fence itself may be 12 feet high. The animal looks like it's maybe 6 feet behind the fence, which would make it smaller. It appears to be about half the height of the fence. It's maybe about 7.5 feet tall.
That's much bigger than the alleged size of a chupacabra. And there's another issue.
The chupacabra is allegedly a quadrupedal or four-legged animal, but this appears to be bipedal rather than quadrupedal. Bipedal means it's walking on two legs.
Next, wildlife biologist Stephanie Shuttler examines the creature's hair.
Chupacabras are described as being more hairless with gray and scaly skin. In this image, it seems to be more shaggy. It seems to have long hair, especially on top. So it doesn't fit the description.
And even though sightings of the creature have been reported, Shuttler says the proof has yet to be discovered.
Any evidence of animals that were thought to be chupacabras, it always ended up being a canid species like a coyote, dog, or fox with mange.
Demodectic mange is caused by a parasitic mite that lives in the hair follicles of canines. To rid themselves of the parasites, canines will scratch their fur and skin until it falls off. But the biggest red flag of all, why the zoo only released one image of such a startling discovery?
Camera traps, when they're triggered, they usually take multiple photos. So I would love to see the photos before and after. There's rarely a singular photo of an animal when the cameras are triggered. I suspect this was a publicity stunt by the Amarillo Zoo. If they really wanted to figure out what this animal was, there would definitely be more photos of it.
Now hold on a second. If this is a hoax, then the zoo has been keeping up the deception for months. Our verdict? Unidentified creature. A Seattle-based company specializing in wireless cameras donated 80 color night vision cameras to the Amarillo Zoo after this image went viral. So should this creature reappear, there should be plenty of proof to determine what it is.
In May 2021, Queensland-based Yowie researcher Dean Harrison and his team are testing out infrared cameras at Springbrook National Park. They picked this spot because they believe they've seen traces of Yowie activity among the brush. And that night, they captured this mysterious footage. The thermal imagery seems to show a solitary figure hiding behind or even hugging a large tree trunk.
Now, this is doing what Yowies do. They hug a tree, pretend they're a part of a tree if there's a human in the area, and they just blend. So you can see him just putting his head in.
Minutes later, the image changes. Now it looks like there's a couple.
Two giant creatures emerge from the foliage, and one is bending down to pick up something.
As it bends over, you can also make out what looks like one of the creature's heads. It looks cone-shaped. The figures are large with wide shoulders and ape-like proportions. Field researcher Cliff Barrickman, who has been to Australia to study the Yowie, says the footage aligns with descriptions from indigenous peoples going back centuries.
All of the Aborigines down there have drawings on the walls of caves depicting these things. They're prevalent in their storytelling traditions as well. But then the settlers came in the late 1700s, and they too started running into Yowies, which is another very strong indicator that they're a real biological animal.
Now, Bigfoot-like creatures are part of folklore the world over. Nepal has the Yeti, Mongolia has the Alma. And one theory is that they all descended from a single Asian ancestor, some of whom made it to Australia, while others crossed the Bering Land Bridge, came to North America, and evolved into Bigfoot. If this video is real, it could help prove that theory, but that's a big if.
There's some sort of subject, creature, person, if you will. It's something that's emitting a heat signature. And as we go through different FLIR filter arrays, this object's movement is consistent. There is something happening in here that's moving around.
Look at the footage with this filter. Now the head comes into better view. It appears to have a pronounced sagittal crest, a ridge of bone along the top of the cranium. It's similar to what's seen in the skulls of the early hominid Australopithecus, which some believe to be the common ancestor of Bigfoot, Yowie, and other similar creatures. But Primo is cautious.
Although we have not found any evidence to support that the recording was fabricated, we have no idea what is being depicted here.
Next, our zoologist Roxy Furman analyzes the anatomy of the figures.
What we can see clearly at one point is that there are two animals pictured. It also looks like it's a bipedal animal, which means it walks on two legs.
That might have you thinking primate, but here's a key fact. There are no known primates native to Australia. In fact, the only bipedal animals are the cassowary and the kangaroo, which look nothing like this. So how do we explain the heat signatures in those head shapes? Furman thinks she may have the answer. People wearing headlamps.
That would explain why the head's a slightly strange shape.
That would mean the people were either misidentified or they're participants in an elaborate hoax, maybe Australia's version of the Patterson-Gimlin film, if that was a hoax too. But anthropologist Kathy Strain says that in this case, size does matter. The research team went back to the spot in daylight and measured the tree, matching the thermal footage as best they could to get a sense of the size of the figures in the infrared video.
Whatever it is more than 8 feet tall. The possibility of them being human is highly unlikely. I came to the conclusion that what this video shows are two real Yowie. I think it is one of the most significant films taken in at least 50 years.
So yes, there's a possibility that this is a hoax. But based on Professor Strain's estimate of the creature's height, we're going to say these are possible Yowies.
Havia Iloilo, Philippines. A CCTV security camera rolls on a warm July evening in 2021. The camera captures a dimly lit street where a woman, later identified in the news as Mary Lou, sits in front of her home cleaning dishes. Unbeknownst to Mary Lou, a stranger approaches from behind. Then quickly, and as quietly as she arrives, the woman continues down the street, reaches a tree, then she seemingly folds over, dropping to the ground. The woman begins to crawl on all fours back towards Mary Lou. Terrified, Mary Lou stands up and threatens to throw a bucket of water at her. The woman turns and runs away. Watch again. This moment, some people say she doesn't just bend over, but transforms. A week later, another alleged sighting in the same village captured on a second CCTV camera. This time, the person or creature switches between crawling and hopping. As we push in, we see a woman exiting her home, then jumping back in shock.
It doesn't look like an earthly sort of creature. The legs are bent in weird directions, and there's this long neck right there.
Field researcher Cliff Barrickman says the sightings made local news, with some believing the video captured a famed Filipino creature known as the Aswang.
One of the many stories about Aswangs is that during the day, they're just like people. They're people in your village that you may even know. But after night falls, they shapeshift. They have this proboscis tongue for lapping of blood. They go down on all fours and change their shape and turns their legs around in weird positions. Aswangs are said to be responsible for miscarriages in the community, or really anything bad, like a child dies of some disease. It's kind of the catch-all boogeyman. If you want your kids to behave, it's like, don't go out there, Aswangs are out there.
The Aswang are believed to take the forms of vampires, were-dogs, and witches. It's said they can be warded off by salt, ash, or urine, depending on whom you ask. Is this mythical creature what we're seeing here? We'll need to ask our experts.
Biology professor Floyd Hayes applies what's known as kinematics to the second video, the study of animal locomotion.
This creature appears to be quite flexible in its mode of locomotion. It appears to be hopping and transitioning between being quadrupedal and bipedal, unlike what's been reported for the Aswang.
Next, he turns to the creature's anatomy.
In my opinion, the body proportions are very similar to a human. The hind limbs appear to be much longer than the forelimbs, and the feet are pointing forward.
When we line up these proportions with that of a human, that certainly looks like a match. As for the head
is rather obscure in the image, but it looks as though it actually removes a hat as it exits the video.
Anthropologist Kathy Strain believes some legends are legitimate sightings of real creatures, but she's skeptical of this particular clip.
This could be a hoax because as the creature comes to this tree, it pops up and it looks over to see if this person is coming out of their door. That is more human-like, and because they want to make sure they're seen.
If it's a fake, Strain thinks it might be serving a higher purpose.
Folklore has a place in society to teach certain skill sets or certain beliefs.
Mythology across all cultures serves to reinforce cultural norms, such as the imperative for children to stay inside at night.
They get them home on time, to be generally afraid of strangers.
And indeed, we tracked down the guy who made the second video, and he admitted he staged the stunt after being inspired by the first Mary Lou video. Not for fun, but to help with COVID quarantine compliance during the pandemic.
After I saw that video, I was thinking that it might be an inspiration for me to do the hoax. So I did the video for the community purposes, just to force the children to stay inside of their home because it was in the midst of pandemic. This is actually the mask that I wear on that time.
So that may explain the second video, but what about the first one that inspired it? Is it possible that an actual Aswang is responsible for terrifying Mary Lou in the alley?
When this lady comes back towards her and gets down on all fours, she's behaving like a typical Aswang, according to Filipino folklore. She's now gone into a different state where she's no longer human, and her trying to get closer to her without being seen indicates to me that she meant that lady harm. But you don't have a clear view of what she looked like when she was totally down on the ground. It's kind of dark, she's behind a fence. I'm willing to say that I don't really know what happened there.
So we have a split decision. We know the second clip is a hoax, but we can't say that for certain about the first. Aswangs are traditionally women, and while we don't know this woman's intent or state of mind, we do know she was crawling, and Mary Lou was genuinely frightened. We'll stay on the lookout for any future Aswang sightings.
April 2022. A couple in their 50s holiday in the Scottish Highlands. After waking up early on a Monday morning and heading out with their camera, the couple is taking in the eerie sight of the still waters of Loch Ness when they record this.
What on earth is it?
Take a closer look as we zoom in and sharpen the image. It looks like a creature moving through the water.
So admittedly, this video was hard to make out, but I want to draw your attention to a couple of features that really intrigue us. First of all, it is this wake that leads us to believe that this is actually a creature moving through the water. And then, this hump right here is so consistent with other sightings of the Loch Ness Monster.
Some researchers have called this the most significant footage to come off Loch Ness in the last 20 years. It doesn't seem to have an artificial or staged quality.
Yeah, it's really pushing forward now.
It seems like whatever they're filming is actually there in Loch Ness.
Field researcher Ken Gerhardt says the elusive, legendary creature, affectionately known as Nessie, has actually had its fair share of caught-on-camera moments.
The first compelling image of the Loch Ness Monster dates from November of 1933. And then in April of 1934, something known as the surgeon's photo surfaced. It appeared to show a small head, a long neck, and a hump protruding out of Loch Ness, and quickly achieved worldwide fame. Unfortunately, in the 1990s, researchers proved that the surgeon's photo was in fact a hoax.
But the sightings continue to this day. Nessie is often described as an aquatic creature having two humps, which has led to the theory that there is a surviving plesiosaur swimming beneath the surface of the loch.
Plesiosaurs were an archaic marine reptile that lived alongside the dinosaurs up until the end of the Cretaceous period about 65 million years ago. They were about 20 or 30 feet long. They had a very big body with a long neck and a small head, 4 flippers, and a very powerful tail. And in some respects, this does fit some of the eyewitness accounts of Nessie.
But Gerhardt says there's a good reason why many Nessie sightings remain unexplained to this day.
Loch Ness is incredibly deep, up to 754 feet. And what's really problematic in terms of research is that the water is very dark.
Despite those challenges, researchers have managed to collect compelling evidence that something is lurking in the loch.
Dating back to 1954, there have been literally dozens of sonar contacts with large animate objects swimming in Loch Ness, 20 to 30 feet long, usually serpentine in shape. And as recently as this year, there was a sonar contact at a depth of about 500 feet of a large serpentine, unidentified object about 20 to 30 feet long, further adding to the body of evidence that the Loch Ness Monster exists.
Loch Ness holds an estimated 263 billion cubic feet of water, which is more than all the water in all the lakes, rivers, and reservoirs in the whole of England and Wales combined. So could this video be the latest proof that Nessie is somewhere in there? We turn to our experts to find out.
Forensic video expert Michael Primo determines if this video is yet another hoax.
In terms of authenticity, nothing appears to be CGI. The video appears to be consistent and plays consistently. No editing or splicing was detected. Through the media interrogation, digital information analysis, through medics, we were able to confirm the authenticity of this video, and it is genuine.
So if the video is real, what are we looking at? We turn to marine biologist Dr. Shay Conger to break it down.
You can actually see, based on the other objects around it, that not only is this animal moving through the water, it's actually navigating. You can see it turn towards the shoreline. To me, that means it's not something being towed or something stuck in the water. This is actually a really large animal, I think, moving across the surface of Loch Ness.
So could a dinosaur, thought to be extinct for 65 million years, really survive in the frigid, murky waters of Loch Ness?
Plesiosaurs did actually inhabit this area, but plesiosaurs were known to be very large, voracious predators, so there would have to be a lot of food to support a remnant dinosaur. It would be very difficult for an animal like a plesiosaur to obtain enough food, so I can rule out that this is some sort of living dinosaur.
Furthermore, Conger says that in one of the biggest DNA studies of its kind, scientists from New Zealand's Otago University were able to identify the presence of around 3,000 species in the deep, dark waters of Loch Ness.
This 2019 study actually ruled out the idea of some plesiosaur living in Loch Ness because there was no genetic material associated with that was found.
DNA from whales and dolphins was also identified in Loch Ness by the researchers. Conger rules those out, though, because you can't see a dorsal fin in the video. But she does have one guess.
The eDNA study actually showed a lot of eel DNA in Loch Ness, and this brings the possibility that maybe the Loch Ness monster is actually just a large eel being sighted at the surface.
If it is an eel, it's huge, which is fascinating in itself.
There's still a mystery that's going on, and we're not really sure what we're seeing in Loch Ness.
Our verdict, we're going to say this is possibly a gigantic eel, though we can't say for certain what species. Perhaps one that hasn't been discovered yet. But the mystery is far from solved, so we'll keep our eyes peeled for more evidence.
July 2020, Montauk, New York. A young couple is walking on the beach. It's midday, and the two are searching for driftwood on the shore.
They noticed some sort of odd smell in the air. As they got closer, they realized there was a dead animal washed up on the beach. Something that definitely does not look normal.
Take a closer look at the dead, decomposing creature of unknown origin.
Its body is bloated, the skin is all tan from probably floating around in the ocean for a couple days, and can you imagine the stench?
The carcass is highly reminiscent of another famous find nearby, the so-called Montauk monster.
News headlines were made around the world in July of 2008 when a bizarre creature washed up on the shores of Ditch Plains.
Everyone had a theory about the 2008 photos. Some wondered if the creature was a turtle without its shell. Some speculated it was a pit bull that had been beaten in an underground dogfight, or a dead raccoon whose hair had come out in the ocean. And what was up with that apparent beak? Might this be something unnatural?
Almost immediately, online conspiracy theories began to circulate that this creature was actually from Plum Island, which is the center of a disease research facility maintained by the United States government.
A 1971 New York Times article described the facility as a devil's island for the deadliest animal disease germs known to man, and the debunked conspiracy theory claimed it was the source of Lyme disease. Adding to the mystery, the rotten corpse disappeared before it could be analyzed.
Well, of course people are going to connect the dots. This thing has to be from that thing because I don't know what this is and I don't know what that is, therefore they're probably related.
During the Cold War, Plum Island was the site of a secret biological weapons program targeting livestock. It's currently run by the Department of Homeland Security. So what to make of this recent grisly discovery? The Montauk monster of 2020? We showed the photos to our experts.
This animal at first glance might seem abnormal.
Marine biologist Dr. Shay Conger considers the Plum Island theory. She says neither of the two Montauk monsters look like mutants.
I can tell that this animal isn't some sort of deformed creature because it has every typical aspect of the skeletal structure of a mammal.
So could it be a sea creature of some kind? Wildlife biologist Lucy Eckersley takes a closer look.
You can see it's got all 4 limbs attached and a thin tail.
That says mammal, and she sees hands, which means it's a land creature.
From what I can see from these pictures, it looks like an animal that walks on all 4s. Maybe it could climb trees as well. It could probably grasp things with its 4 limbs. But it also looks quite stocky and round, so I wouldn't necessarily think it was a fast-moving predator that runs after its prey.
That rules out a canine like a pit bull.
The characteristics that I see here, including the teeth, as well as the body structure, and in particular the small front paws that seem to have very thin, flexible fingers, this is relatively easy to identify as a raccoon.
That's a raccoon? Experts say yes, and the original Montauk monster might have been one too. And that beak? Likely the decomposing bones and cartilage of a snout.
Some of the fur is missing, but most of the muscles are still intact. Many animals, if you take away their fur, look very, very different.
Lucy has a point. Check out this creature. Can you name it? Turns out it's a hairless bear.
And so an animal like a raccoon, if you take away its fluffy tail, it's going to look quite unusual. So I don't blame these people for not being sure what this is.
You know, it never helps matters when the corpses of these animals go missing, fueling talk of conspiracy. But in this case, we can tell a lot from the creature's body structure, teeth, and claws. Our verdict? This is the carcass of a raccoon.
May 2021, Saskatchewan, Canada. 2 female security guards are working a 12-hour night shift on a Cree First Nation reserve when they discover they are not alone. The footage shared to TikTok shows a grassy slope beside a parking lot as a robotic voice, a TikTok staple, narrates the user's comment.
When we work night security 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. and we see something coming at us at midnight.
It's difficult to make out, but it appears to be a nearly translucent humanoid figure walking towards the security guards. The figure seems to blend in with the tall grass and has no identifying features. As it gets closer to the car, the camera suddenly turns away and the video cuts out. The footage triggers a frenzy of speculation on TikTok. One of the most popular theories is that the security guards have had an encounter with something called a skinwalker.
In Native American folklore, and specifically in the Navajo traditions, we hear references to beings known as skinwalkers. And these are shaman or practitioners of dark magic that are shapeshifters, that are able to transform from a human into any type of animal. Typically, it's for malevolent reason.
In fact, in 1878, the hysteria over skinwalkers culminated in the Navajo witch purge, when 40 suspected witches were killed to restore harmony and balance to the tribe.
These skinwalkers are greatly feared by the Navajo. In fact, it is forbidden to mention the name because it is bad luck and will cause doom to those that mention that name.
There may also be a reason why this creature chose these security guards.
There are theories that these skinwalkers are drawn to certain individuals. The premise behind this is to lure unsuspecting victims deep into the wilderness and to cause them harm, or to assimilate them into skinwalkers themselves.
Since October 2020 alone, hundreds of videos with the hashtag Skinwalker have been posted to TikTok, accounting for 39 million views. So could this meteoric rise in Skinwalker videos lead to incontrovertible proof these evil beings exist?
Wildlife biologist Dr. Stephanie Shuttler analyzes the video and doesn't see much to support the skinwalker theory.
It looks like a man walking, but you don't really see any clothing. It seems to be like an all-gray figure. To me, it's strange that if they can make shapes into different animals, they seem very human-like, and it doesn't seem to resemble any animal in this area at all, or even any exotic animals.
And she says there's an even bigger red flag.
I also don't understand why the camera drops down. I understand they're scared, but if they're really interested in getting this, it seems like they would have the camera on the whole time.
Next, we take the video to science writer Mick West, who's fully willing to give it the benefit of the doubt.
It could actually be some kind of cryptid coming out of the foliage towards the car, but because it's such a low resolution video and because it's so highly compressed, we can't do the normal types of analysis that we do to see if there are indications of fakery.
Still, West isn't ready to call this a legitimate skinwalker. Instead, he offers up another theory.
Kind of see a shape suddenly appear out of the foliage, and it's amorphous, and it looks like a figure walking towards the road. If someone wanted to fake this, or someone was trying to scare somebody else, then you could very easily get this effect just by having somebody in a green camouflage suit and just kind of come out of the background. It is possible that there are some kind of strange creatures out there in the desert that we haven't discovered before, but this really isn't very good evidence of it. So I think I'm going to have to go with a guy in the suit.
We're going to go ahead and call these sightings a human, probably using some kind of camouflage like a ghillie suit. So no need to cancel your upcoming camping plans. But keep your eyes and ears open, and if something comes at you, well, we suggest you run away, just in case.
October 2016, Craig McKay of Alaska's Bureau of Land Management is overlooking the Chena River in Fairbanks when he notices something extremely peculiar in the water. It looks to be around 20 to 25 feet long, and when we zoom in, it appears to be swimming against the current.
I looked down and saw this really bizarre object. It was much larger than anything I'd seen in the river, and it was undulating or swinging back and forth in the current. It was really spooky.
Given the location of this discovery, field researcher Ken Gerhardt says we should consider the local folklore.
In Alaska, we do have a number of legends of water creatures. The Inuit culture talks about something called the Tizharuk, which is a long serpentine animal with a long head, a prominent tail fin. There are many tales of the Tizharuk actually snatching people off of bridges or out of canoes and devouring them voraciously.
Gerhardt says descriptions of the Tizharuk vary, but the most terrifying form is said to be a giant eel-like creature with transparent skin, which not only allows observers to see still digesting victims, but also makes the creature less visible when stalking its prey.
In addition, we have the Lake Iliamna monster, which is also known as the Jigignak. This particular monster has been reported several times. It's described as being 10 to 30 feet in length, with a torpedo-shaped body and kind of a dull aluminum color. So, we have to ask the question, could this be related to those stories?
Early stories of the Jig-Ignak described fish-like monsters traveling in groups and attacking canoes. So is that, or one of its descendants, what we're looking at here? Let's let the experts decide.
Marine biologist Dr. Shay Conger says if this thing were a snake, it's unlikely to have accumulated snow on its back. And as for serpents,
there's no water snakes in Alaska. This is because reptiles and amphibians are exotherms. They're reliant on the environment to maintain their body heat, and there really isn't enough heat to allow these species to persist in this area.
So Dr. Conger turns for clues to the hydrology of the scene, the motion of the water.
It seems to kind of be moving back and forth through the water, as you would expect an animal with a tail to be swimming against the current.
But hold on, look again.
When the video zooms out a little bit, you can actually see that this object doesn't seem to be moving forward at all. Rather, it's just fixed in place and being hit by the moving current downriver. Therefore, I conclude this isn't a biological object. Rather, it's some type of debris like a piece of rope or a fishing line encased in ice.
So there you have it. Our verdict, based on Dr. Conger's hydrology analysis, this is a frozen rope. But sightings of Alaskan lake and river monsters continue to this day. Are they all misidentifications? Or is there really something down there? We'll keep looking for more video until we have an answer.